What's up, everybody, man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another MonsterVerse news and updates. Today we are diving on into an interview with Godzilla 2014 director Gareth Edwards, going in depth with some of the questions we have had the longest in this fan base, such as what the heck happened to the home release of Godzilla 2014 and why did it look so terrible for so long? Why was it so dark? And also, where was the MonsterVerse heading if Gareth Edwards stuck around? What was Gareth Edwards' original Godzilla Trilogy going to look like in the MonsterVerse? Of course, we know Edwards was going to do Godzilla, Godzilla 2, and Godzilla 3, but what were they? We finally have an answer, and it is not what I expected. And we also have a pretty surprising leak from Godzilla Kong: The New Empire that I'm amazed has surfaced after all this time, that gives us a look at where that movie was originally headed. Let's get into it. Chapter time's in the description below, skip to whichever story you want. But for now, starting out with some artwork like always, this first piece comes to us from WANEM. This is their Godzilla Evolution poster, very cool, obviously featuring Godzilla 2014, Godzilla 2019, and Godzilla Evolved, very cool. It looks fantastic, I really like it, and it's actually relevant to the Gareth Edwards interview portion of this video because Edwards kind of talks a bit about the evolution of Godzilla over time in the MonsterVerse, which I thought was very cool. My favorite interviewer out there, Chris Mujahangir over at Toho Kingdom, did a fantastic interview with Gareth Edwards, the director of Godzilla 2014, around the release of Jurassic Park Rebirth. Jurassic Park Rebirth, I really loved. I've reviewed it on the channel. I really liked that movie a whole lot. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great monster movie. Gareth Edwards, I think, did a great job with it. And this interview is so fun. I really love it. And I love that, that despite the fact that it's a Jurassic Park interview or Jurassic World interview, they talk so much about Godzilla. And I'm actually, well, I highly recommend you go check the interview out for yourself, link down below. I'm not going to go through the Jurassic World portions of this. I'm going to focus only on the Godzilla stuff, despite the fact that there was really interesting Jurassic World stuff discussed as well. But getting into it, finally, after all this time, Gareth Edwards has confirmed the original home release and Blu-ray release of Godzilla 2014 had a botched color transfer and wound up too dark. Obviously, if you've owned the movie on Blu-ray, it looks abominable. It looks terrible. It is definitively the worst looking Godzilla Blu-ray that has ever come out. None of them have ever looked as bad as the general 2014 home releases did because you couldn't see it. It's so freaking dark. You can barely see what's happening. It's terrible. Why did that ever occur? Well, we finally have an answer. I also just want to emphasize that because there was some debate in the fan base over if that was even a real thing that happened. I saw some people like outright denying it, being like, no, that's what it always looked like in theaters, when it just wasn't in theaters. It was a very, very different picture presentation. It was a lot brighter, a lot more vibrant, a lot more color saturation, a lot prettier. And here, Gareth Edwards finally opens up about it. After years of pushing, Toho Kingdom gets an answer. Chris Mujahangir has been fighting the good fight trying to get this info for 10 years now, and he finally got it. Gareth Edwards says he fixed the color transfer during the pandemic with the 4K release of Godzilla 2014. He confirms that the original home release of the movie back in 2014 had actually a really good master. He confirmed the master release himself, saying that it originally looked really good, but somewhere along the line, the transfer wound up different than what he approved. He says it was probably a fault with the conversion from the master to Blu-ray or to the home media version. I don't know if I totally believe that, simply because it's on the Blu-ray, it's on the DVD, it's even on the streaming versions. It was on the digital release of the movie for a very long time. There was really only one clear way to watch this movie, and it was the actual 3D version of the movie. If you owned the 3D version, it was brighter. Also, more recently, like online, I think some places like a Vudu or even HBO, I think, have helped to fix that color transfer, but that's after Gareth Edwards was brought back. He says with the 4K re-release in 2020, he went to Burbank and confirmed a brand new picture presentation for the film, confirming the new quality and saying that it looked back to how it should have in the first place. And he does say here it should look perfect, but the last time he saw it was at that confirmation meeting. So I don't think he's watched the 4K since then. So I don't think he actually knows what it looks like, which means there's always a potential he looks at it and goes, it's a little off. It's just a little off. But I think overall, Godzilla 2014 is back to looking pretty great. The 4K looks pretty fantastic. I still do tend to turn on the vibrant mode on my TV when I watch Godzilla 2014. It looks beautiful like that. It looks so good. But on the whole, it's looking so much better than it used to, and I'm very happy about that. It was really a shame that people judged this movie so long for it being so dark you couldn't see anything, when that just simply was not the movie's fault. As for where the MonsterVerse was going before Gareth Edwards left, he finally opens up about the future of the MonsterVerse. Now, previously, Gareth Edwards has spoken very little about what the future of the MonsterVerse was going to look like. There were early reports that he said, he wanted to push the universe into a place where mankind felt that they needed to build their own Godzilla out of fear of, the monsters, which of course implied Mechagodzilla. What is more widely available, I've never actually found that interview for myself. The one I have found is where Gareth Edwards explains that he always liked the idea of introducing Monster Island into this universe, and that is something he would have been interested in moving forward with in the future of this universe, is getting the universe to a point where Monster Island existed, which I still think is something they absolutely need to do. I did a video about that not too long ago. Other than that, we don't know much until now. Gareth Edwards admits that he really only ever heard an initial pitch from producer Thomas Tull, who laid out roughly how the franchise was going to evolve. And Edwards says it evolved very similar to that version. It evolved very similar to that. So Gareth Edwards was only brought on for one picture, Godzilla 2014. Then it was announced he was doing a sort of trilogy where he was going to be doing 3 movies, and there was some people thinking that there was a Godzilla 2 and a Godzilla 3, but here Edwards fully confirms that there was no Gareth Edwards trilogy. That never existed. The MonsterVerse evolved very similar to how it was originally laid out when he agreed to do the trilogy before leaving for Star Wars. He says that the version of Godzilla 2 he was pitched wound up very similar to the version Michael Dougherty ended up doing, but he says Dougherty deepened it and took it in his own direction. Basically, Dougherty took it and ran with it, and then the MonsterVerse has evolved fairly differently from there, probably tonally in particular. But he says even back then, he heard that it would eventually lead to Godzilla vs. Kong by the 3rd movie, meaning the Gareth Edwards trilogy was Godzilla 2014, a Godzilla movie with King Ghidorah, Rodan, and Mothra, and then a Godzilla movie where he fights Kong. Of course, we don't know how those 2 plots would have played out with Edwards leading the charge, but it would have been the same arc, the same movies. Kong Skull Island was still separate of that. That was still its own little thing. Edwards sounds like he was probably going to be directing Godzilla 2, King of the Monsters, and of course Godzilla vs. Kong. So that's pretty interesting to hear finally after all this time. Chris asks why we don't have a Godzilla 2014 commentary yet, and Edwards is just surprised to learn he didn't do one, saying he already thought he did a commentary for Godzilla 2014. He says he's absolutely not against it, but is just simply surprised he didn't do it back in the day. He said he'd happily do it if there was a reason to, like an anniversary release of the film, which, hey, I mean, we're coming up on 15 years, not too far off from now, so maybe we can get a commentary release then, or maybe we'll get like a Shout Factory re-release of the film or something with a special edition, Like they always do a great job putting special features on their releases. I don't know. Warner Bros. Probably not going to license the film out like that, but just saying. That'd be cool. He says he is a little worried, though, that he won't remember a ton about making the movie, and so he'd be a little uninformed while doing his commentary, which is the problem when it takes a director so long to do a commentary. He says he's gracious to Toho Kingdom for the release of the Akira Takarada scene after so many years. That came out a few years ago. That was great. I loved that part. And then Edwards confirms that the Titanosaurus in Jurassic World Rebirth was not intentionally a callback to Terror of Mechagodzilla's Titanosaurus. While the designs do feature some similarities, including the orange fins on the head, they were not callbacks to the Toho Kaiju. Instead, he says the inspiration actually came all the way back from making Godzilla 2014. When they were designing Godzilla, one of the things they did was put fins on Godzilla to see what he would look like if he was a little more realistic. It's in the art book. You can see the artwork for yourself. It's pretty weird. Yeah, they put fins on Godzilla to see a realistic look of the character with fish-like features, and this has wound up sticking with him for all this time, and so when making Jurassic World Rebirth, he reincorporated that idea into the Titanosaurs. He says the orange is simply just because the fins are semi-transparent, so when the sunlight hits them, it turns them orange. They're not literally orange like the character in Toho's series. This I loved to hear, and I would love to see this come to life someday, whether in Monarch Legacy of Monsters or another Apple spinoff or just a movie in or outside of the MonsterVerse. I honestly couldn't care less. I love Gareth Edwards films. I love him as a filmmaker, and I would love to see what else he's got in store, especially because he's learned so many lessons as a filmmaker and as a Godzilla viewer since the time he made 2014. Edwards admits that his brain still goes to Godzilla. He's still a massive Godzilla fan fan and still considers what he would do with Godzilla to this day. He says he thinks about how he would rework Godzilla 2014 to make it better, and even to return to Godzilla at least once a week. He thinks often about how he would like to return to Godzilla, but do something very different with him, or do something else with him. This obviously actually checks out with other interviews we've seen where he was talking to Takashi Miyazaki, the director of Godzilla Minus One, saying he was very inspired by Godzilla Minus One and wishes he could do a movie like that someday. Edwards says that he's just simply happy to see the MonsterVerse still going with talented filmmakers working on it. He says his biggest sense of achievement to this day is seeing, especially in Japan, that when you go into stores, one of the Godzillas available or on display as figures or t-shirts or whatever is the legendary Godzilla. He says that it's like seeing his kids' legacy all grown up and they're off doing their own thing now, but simply he's just happy, especially that Japan has embraced this Godzilla. He then reflects very fondly on the Godzilla 2012 Comic-Con teaser trailer with lots of pride and is happy about it, and that teaser trailer is just phenomenal. It's in some ways better than the movie Godzilla 2014. It's just truly amazing, and it was purely his vision. It's fantastic. So apocalyptic, I love it. And then he says, once again, he's just happy to see the series has taken off without him. He says it's like got the momentum, the escape velocity to fire off well past him and still thrive without him, and that's what he's happy about. He says that that proves that there is a lasting legacy to his film simply because the legacy has gone beyond his film without dying, which is a very cool way to look at it. He then talks about how thankful he is to have formed friendships with the other MonsterVerse directors, saying he's jealous of every single one of their movies that followed his and is very inspired by the sequels to Godzilla 2014. He talks about how wonderful it is to see Godzilla figures in the United States in stores today, and how it feels like the 2014 film created a brand new era for Godzilla, and that is the true thing to be proud of about that movie. He also calls the MonsterVerse Godzilla our Godzilla, regardless of the design, which I thought was really cool. Like, it's our Godzilla. They share the MonsterVerse Godzilla. As filmmakers, it's theirs together. It's their baby. All Godzillas in the MonsterVerse are Goji, damn it. They are all simply extensions of his design. Even Godzilla Evolved is just an extension of the 2014 design. You actually really see that with the concept art, which really harkens back to the concept art of the 2014 Godzilla. And that's absolutely true. As a Godzilla fan, I can tell you, before 2014, there was barely any Godzilla anywhere in the US. I used to hunt down Godzilla Bandai figures at Kmart, and then Kmart's died out, and that was the last I saw Godzilla until 2014. So yes, Gareth Edwards, you did something that nobody else did, and I'm so thankful for it. In 60 years of Godzilla, he was never as accessible as he is now, because of you, Gareth Edwards, who definitely watches my videos. Jumping off from Godzilla 2014 and extending the Godzilla 2014 design, some concept art for Monarch Legacy of Monsters features a kind of weird amalgamation of Godzilla 2014 and 2019's design. It's very interesting. It doesn't really look like any of the Godzillas in the film. I guess it looks a little bit like the Godzilla that appears in 1954, but Juro Hiromu discovered that the Godzilla concept art, the face on that Godzilla, actually lines up perfectly with Adam's skeleton from Godzilla 2014. Even the teeth look very similar. Adam's skeleton's obviously something I've talked so much about on the channel this year. I've gone really in depth with the lore of Adam, aka Dagon from Godzilla Aftershock. The skull is very bear-like, bearing a strong resemblance to the skull from Godzilla vs. Kong, which is a Godzilla skull that for some reason looks very much like a bear. It's that giant skull that's way bigger than Godzilla that's in Kong's temple. Even in the novelization stated to be a Godzilla-like creature, which is how they refer to Dagon, which is how they refer to all of the Godzilla species, Godzilla-like creatures. So it's cool to see that this skull literally lines up with the artwork of Godzilla's skeleton from Godzilla 2014. It's really interesting to me. And then finally, like I said, there was a pretty surprising leak for Godzilla Kong: The New Empire after all of this time. I'm amazed that it came out after all this time. Most of this stuff is lost media at this point, so it's cool to see. I don't know who sent it to him, but Behemoth Mode shared this lost Fosphera Iwi carving. Fosphera was going to be the monster in Godzilla Kong: The New Empire that the Iwi worshipped, that Gia awakens and helps Godzilla and Kong. It was going to be the one that stopped Godzilla and Kong from fighting. It was originally intended to be Mothra, but Legendary didn't seem to want to pay for the rights to Mothra, so they made the movie with a stand-in monster, Fosphera, until eventually Adam Wingard was able to convince them to switch it back to Mothra. That's actually why in the movie they never say Mothra's name on screen. It's always ADR, where someone's mouth is off screen when they say the word. The cave art looks noticeably CGI CGI. It lacks some of the texture that you saw, for instance, in Godzilla King of the Monsters when they show the same Temple of the Moth artwork. Here, we see the original Fosphera artwork. It's cropped, but there it is. The original Fosphera artwork. Very cool. I don't know where this came from. I know that there was a big batch of leaks for Godzilla Kong: The New Empire before the movie came out. I actually think that is where this came from. I just don't know how Behemoth Mode found it, but I thought it was very cool. Yet another piece of evidence in the Fosphera mystery, as there's a few images of Fosphera out there in the universe. This just happens to be the newest one that has surfaced, which is pretty cool. That is where I will leave you for this one, you guys. Make sure to tune into the next one as we go in depth with Godzilla Kong Supernova with a bunch of behind the scenes making of interviews and also some big potential updates which might change the future of that film. So stick around for that by subscribing. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. And if that's not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.